Hey, what's up guys? This is gonna be something of a let's play for Monster Party Parody World, which is the prototype of Monster Party that was never released until very recently, I believe on July 3rd. And before I start, I'd like to give a special thanks to Mr. Mark from Nintendo Age who actually released this. Because as a connoisseur of prototypes, this is one that I've been waiting to play for a long time, because I'm actually a big fan of Monster Party. It's actually one of my favorite NES games. So without further ado, let's get started. Now I'm not going to play the whole beginning story, because there's really not much different besides, the text. I can't read any of that, whatever, but like the biggest difference is instead of an M on Mark's shirt, he's got some other symbol, like, because his name isn't Mark, it's something else. So let's just get right into the game. Now as I play this, I'll try to talk about a lot of the differences, but if you really want to know a lot of the differences, all you gotta do is go to the cutting room floor and they have most of them there. So right here, instead of the eggplant, we get Audrey from Little Shop of Horrors. Still just as easy as the regular game for him. The game itself is actually way tougher. Like, the difficulty is spiked beyond belief in this version. It's still very beatable, but it's just a lot harder than the actual released game. Mostly because the bosses, if their sprite touches you, you lose like 4 or 5 points of health instead of 1, like in the regular release. Which is why I'm sitting here getting some health at the beginning, because you'll have a hard time beating the first level if you don't just sit here and get some health right off the bat. It actually would have been pretty nice if the regular Monster Party would have had a hard mode, where the bosses did more damage to you when they touched you, kind of like this, because it makes you play the game a bit differently. Mostly, instead of just sitting there, like, using your baseball bat on the bosses, getting hit, keep using the bat, whatever, until they die, you actually got to try to dodge them and shit in this game. You can't just sit there and whoop on them and get hit by them. You got to actually try to dodge their shit. So the biggest change that it has for me is that instead of... I still do pretty much the same strategy as the regular game. But instead of just taking a hit from the bosses, I'll take a hit from their projectile, because their projectile will still only do 1 damage. So you can get hit by that and then walk through them and keep beating them up. Just make sure you don't get hit by the actual boss sprite itself, or you're gonna have a bad time. Because this is like my 3rd time playing this, and I actually had a really hard time playing this the first time I started, because the difficulty was so much different. So now instead of the pumpkin dude who says, like, don't hurt me or don't tease me or something like that, I don't remember, we got the Planet of the Apes parody with a monkey with a pistol on a horse. So that's pretty cool. Pretty much the exact same boss though. You just gotta make sure you don't get hit by the actual boss. Getting hit by his bullets is fine, because it only does 1 damage, but you get hit by the actual boss and it'll whoop your fucking ass really quickly. So the first stage doesn't really have too many differences, besides a couple of the power-ups are in different places, and like the biggest difference throughout the entire game is going to be the bosses, because a lot of their sprites were changed. The bosses and the power-ups, because a lot of the power-ups got moved around too, which kind of fucks me up, because I played Monster Party to no end, so I know exactly where the power-ups I want are. But in this one, they all got changed around, which is fine. Well, this is before they got changed around, I guess, since this is the prototype. So now we got Medusa, which is an actual chick instead of the snake. And I'm actually kind of glad that they changed it into a snake, because the snake actually looks cooler and more menacing. This, I don't know, it doesn't look very good, honestly. I prefer Snake Medusa. So that's one change that I thought was better in the actual release. I wish they actually would have had a hard mode in the regular release, though, because the difficulty in the original game is very low. Like, that game is easy beyond belief. Because in this one, you don't get health back at the end of the level, which is kind of bad, but whatever. As long as you don't suck complete fucking ass, it's fine. One other thing with this level is the sewer warps don't work. Like, most people, if you never really played Monster Party, you're not going to know what I'm talking about. But there's certain holes that are in the wall that if you press up on them, that'll allow you to warp to a further part of the stage. That hasn't been implemented yet, so it just doesn't work in this one. Right here we got the shrimp fight, which is a little bit different, because you don't get to fight the onion ring and the shish kebab, or whatever the hell the third thing is. What's also a little weird is if you watch the enemies at the beginning of the game when I was doing my intro, like, all of them have blood on them. The shrimp, the onion ring, and the shish kebab have blood on them, but when you're fighting them, none of them do. And that's the same for the actual released version, too. They all have blood on them, but when you actually fight them, they don't. Something weird with these crocodiles is in the release game, if you're crouching like this, you can actually go right through them and they won't hurt you. But in this version, that doesn't work. I don't know why, like the hit detection got fucked up on translation or something, but you can't just go through them like you can in the regular game. So you actually gotta destroy them or just take damage. One other thing to mention with crawling through them is your actual crawl animation too is a lot slower in this version. Like, he'll move a bit faster. He's still pretty slow in the actual release game, but he is really slow in this version when he's doing the worm. And those little eggs down there, instead of shooting bubbles, they're actually shooting face huggers from aliens, which is pretty cool. Definitely a lot more menacing than fucking bubbles. Nintendo was pretty weird back in the day. Like, name a game that's been released in the current generation where bubbles fucking hurt you. Like bubbles and, you know, all that kinds of shit. The NES was way tougher back then. Like, the slightest of things would kill you back in the day. Nowadays, nobody ain't getting hurt by bubbles. Come on. There we go. I always wondered what the alligators are shooting at you, too. Are they shooting, like, their tail or something? Because that's what the sprite is their tail. Normally I just take damage and go by these things too, but these actually give you hearts, so I kill them. I'm not sure if this one does. Yeah, I didn't think so. Right here I'm going to do a little glitch that actually happens in this version and the release version. If you jump when the spikes are falling and keep tapping the jump button, all the spikes in front of it will fall too, not just the ones that you're trying to get past. So that's pretty helpful, especially when you get Bert. Now we got Dracula instead of the bat thing that's in the released version. And you actually can't crawl under these either. I'm pretty sure you can in the released version. Because there's plenty of room to go under it, but you get hit if you try to. And I actually think this right here is probably the hardest boss in the entire game, because he follows you pretty closely, and it's hard to get away from him. Because like I said before, when the bosses touch you, they do massive amounts of damage. So you gotta either try to get hit by his cows and then get away, or fly over him like I'm doing. Because this dude just follows you. And I don't think any other enemy in the game has that kind of pattern where he'll actually change up what he's doing just to follow you around. So now I'm going to sit here and get some health again. Just because the health is very, like, spare in this game. You can barely find it. Because after you kill the bosses, you don't get question marks either, so there is no way to refill your health from that. The only way to refill your health is to get the hearts and the question marks from the regular enemies. And you can only get 8 of the hearts until they disappear, too, and then you can never get another one on the same level. So you'd have to just sit there and spam the question marks. But I prefer to do the hearts. Because the question marks, for me, I don't know, maybe I'm unlucky with this game or something, but they just tend to give me points fucking constantly, and points are worthless in this game. Like, I see no point to getting the points, you know? There we go. Now we'll have the rocks falling at the edge of the screen, so I don't have to deal with any of those. If you just keep tap and jump. This mummy's actually see-through in the actual release, plus the Sphinx and all the pyramids are blue instead of brown. Nothing too special. I also think if this boss hits you, it only does 1 damage instead of doing the 4. Yeah, he doesn't do as much damage as everybody else for some reason. But that's really what makes this version difficult, is most of the bosses will just whoop the shit out of you. First couple times I played it, I had a pretty hard time with this game, but after playing it a few times, it's not bad at all. The difficulty is still reasonable. I just again wish that the actual released version had a hard difficulty that would have been this, because it would have made it a bit funner. Because I can just run through the regular version and just get hit by everything and still beat the game without ever dying. Now we get the thing. Where I'm not sure if I said this yet or not, but at the beginning, like, you'll see all the bosses go across the screen, and all of them look different than they do in the actual fucking game, besides the plant, I believe, looks the same. Like, the thing at the beginning looked nothing like this. They're all different colors, and I'm not sure why they chose to do that. Because that's like that in the actual release game, too. They have a bunch of bosses that are different than the actual bosses that you fight. This level, there really isn't too many big differences besides the floating blocks that'll hurt you don't exist yet. You still can't crawl through the alligators. And one of the bosses is completely different. It's still the exact same, like, type of boss, but it just looks different like the other ones. Now, hopefully this doesn't take very long, and if it does, I'll put a little, like, thing in the description, but I gotta sit here and do this until I get the bird power up, get my drug so I can turn into my dragon bird thing, which thankfully happened pretty quick. Because the slowpoke boss, unless you want to take forever and be a real fucking slowpoke and actually use his projectiles to hit him back at him, will take forever without getting burnt. That's really the only time where I need to do that, too. Which, like I said, thankfully that went pretty quick. I've had times where it just wouldn't give me it. It would just sit there and give me points. So here's the only boss in the level that's actually really different. Still the same boss, but just looks different. Supposedly this is a Mogwai, which I could see that, but to me it looks more like a fucking Ewok. Like, it just looks way more like an Ewok than a Mogwai, but once it changes, then I can see, you know, what they're trying to get at, but it still doesn't really look like a gremlin to me. Still just as easy as the main game, which all the bosses are. Well, besides if you touch them. If you touch them, you're gonna have a bad time. One other very minor difference between this and the release version that I haven't mentioned yet is there is no sound effect when you pause. In the actual release game there is, but in this there's just no sound effect yet. Now I'm gonna sit here and farm some health again. Like, I obviously don't do this on every level since I didn't do it on the sewers. I just do it on whatever level's the easiest and the fastest. Because even though this is not a speedrun in any sense of the word, I still don't like shit taking forever. Like, especially if I couldn't get burnt really fast at the beginning of this level with that question mark, that would have sucked. Because I don't like to be sitting there watching the same thing for a really long period of time. And honestly, I have a buttload of health right now. Usually you won't have that much, but I guess I've been doing pretty good, I don't know. This is, I've said it before, but this is maybe my third time playing this version. I've played the original release many, many, many times. And I'd actually love to do a real speedrun of that at some point, but I've just never done it. I actually had plans to do a Let's Play or whatever of that for my channel too, but I just never got around to that either. because I just didn't record anything for a long period of time because I just really didn't feel like it. But when I seen that this came out, I was like, hot fucking damn, I'm playing that right now, and I figured I'd record it. Why the hell not? There's actually a different, like, Let's Play type thing on YouTube of this, where the guy actually plays it on an emulator or using, I don't know, whatever, where it feeds the video feeds the video into something so it actually looks clear and it's not just something pointing at a TV screen like I do. But that one has no commentary, which, I don't know, I prefer to hear somebody say something while I'm watching a Let's Play. But so here's our zombie guys. Which is actually one extra, and another big thing is they actually can't hurt you, and you can't hurt them, which is interesting. Because when I was a really young kid playing Monster Party for the first time, I did not understand what the hell was going on when these monsters or zombies or whatever were dancing. So I kept hitting them trying to kill them, and the boss would never die, and I just didn't understand what the hell was happening back then. That was just confusing for my fragile little mind. Now with this boss, the robot face actually changes into like some angry face. I don't know why they changed this. I guess it looks like some copyrighted thing, but I have no idea. I don't know what the hell this is supposed to be. It just looks like an angry face to me. Man, I can't hit him back either. There we go. And that's basically it for this level. There is very few differences besides, again, with the bosses. Some of the levels actually have layout differences, most notably level 7 is quite a bit different because if you pass a couple of the boss doors without beating the bosses, you'd be screwed and you can't actually go back through unless you kill yourself. That's kind of cool. I got a random Bert out of a question mark. Sweetness. I don't even know if he's called Bert in this game. I don't know. I didn't look up too much stuff. I just wanted to play it and see everything for myself. I seen that there was already a thing on the cutting room floor, so I seen a few little things about it, but I made sure to stop reading it pretty quickly because I wanted to see it all for myself, because Monster Party's pretty awesome, and I have been waiting for this for a long time. I didn't think that it was ever going to actually be released, since the guy who had it did not want to part with it. And even though I gave thanks at the beginning, I'm going to give them again. Thanks to you, Mr. Mark from Nintendo Age, for buying and releasing this. You had to have taken on a great loss to buy this game, considering it sold for over $3,000, and just releasing it for free is like the awesomest fucking thing ever. So now we don't have to speculate anymore of what might have been different in the prototype and have prototype remakes or remake projects or whatever the hell it was called. Now we can actually just play the fucking thing. Now this boss right here is a little weird. I'm pretty sure he's unfinished in this version. Because for one, he doesn't say anything when you come in, and two, all he does is scroll along the bottom. Which leads me to believe that this dude was just not finished while they printed this onto cart. Printed, whatever the fuck. Soldered, I don't know. So this level's still as easy as it is in the released version. Probably the easiest level in the whole game. As long as you got some life, I guess, you know, even if you don't, this level's really easy. So, there we go, on to level 7. Round 7, I guess, since these are rounds. But I'm actually going to stop the video right here and make this 2 parts, because I don't like making really long videos. The second part will probably be like 15 minutes or something. I don't know. The next 2 levels will go by pretty quickly, but I'm going to go grab a beer, take a piss, and we'll be back on the second part.